consistency is really king when it comes to consumer recognition, right? So whenever a consumer or a customer of yours comes to your site or comes to your Facebook page or comes to your Twitter feed, you want their initial reaction, their initial view of you to be consistent. So the same picture of you, the same color scheme that you're using, the same fonts, the same logo, same photography style, same pattern or texture. All of those things are really important.
This is The Entrepreneur Way with Neil Ball. Unlocking the secrets of successful entrepreneurs 7 days a week. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Twitter at Neil D. Ball. Napoleon Hill said the power of the mastermind is the driving force. To discover how you can unlock the potential in your business using the power of a mastermind, go to mastermindunlimited.com. And now, here is your host, Neil Ball.
Hello, it's Neil Ball here. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Entrepreneur Way. The Entrepreneur Way is about the entrepreneur's journey, the vision, the mindset, the commitment, the sacrifice, failures, and successes. I am so excited to bring you our special guest today, Philip VanDusen. But before I introduce you to him, I have a quote for you. Jostein Gaarden, I think that's how you pronounce it, said, "I am really more interested in questions than giving answers." The Entrepreneur Way asks the questions so we all get the insights, inspiration and ideas to apply in our businesses. Philip, welcome to the show. Are you ready to share your version of the Entrepreneur Way with us?
I am, Neil. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my story with your listeners.
Thank you for coming on the show, Philip. Philip VanDusen has over 20 years of experience in branding and design, serving as VP of Design at PepsiCo and Old Navy. He was the Executive Creative Director at the global branding agency and Landor Associates. Philip is currently a principal at Verhall Brand Design and is a founder of Verhall.co, a direct-to-consumer e-commerce and media brand. Philip, can you provide us with some more insight into your business and personal life to allow us to get to know more about what you do and who you are?
Sure. Well, I think every entrepreneurial story is really a story. It's a journey. And in fact, my two businesses actually use the word story, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But I grew up a very creative and inventive kid, always drawing and painting and making things, and I started working from a very young age. I mean, I remember in kindergarten, I used to make these little plastic toys. There were these things called creepy crawlers that you could bake this liquid plastic, and it made these little rubberized insects. And I took them to school and sold them out of a cigar box. And I kept coming home and asking my mom to buy me more of this goop that I could make more of these things with. And after a while, she asked me, where are all these things going? And I told her, I'm selling them at school. And she said, well, then that's not how this works. You're going to have to pay me for the goop. So it was like, I immediately kind of put together supply and demand and expenses. But I grew up and I went to school for the fine arts. My brother and sister were both actors, and I decided to go the fine arts way. So I went to university for painting. I got my master's degree in painting, actually, and taught at the university level painting and drawing. And at one point, I went to the south of France and was teaching drawing there and did a lot of printmaking, and came back to my home in Brooklyn, New York, and started up a T-shirt company, putting my artwork on T-shirts and walking the island of Manhattan and selling them to any boutique that would have me. And at this time, it was kind of the dawn of the computer age, and the Mac had just come out, and graphic design and design was just being able to be done on computers. And I was just totally excited by it, enthralled by it, and took to it like a fish in water. And I very quickly kind of went to, after having my t-shirt company, went to work for one of my competitors and as a designer and working with the Mac, and very quickly learned that kind of being a creative director and managing other designers was a lot like teaching, except you weren't out of work every 9 months and you made a lot more money. So I kind of very quickly moved over to, the business side in the fashion world, doing graphic apparel. And I worked my way up through a series of companies, eventually landing at Old Navy, which was, owned by Gap Inc. and was the most successful retailer in history. It grew to $1 billion in sales in under 5 years. So I was part of that rocket ship and managed their graphic apparel business, which was a $700 million a year business, just in graphic T-shirts. It was pretty amazing. And then I worked at a succession of global branding agencies, Anthem Worldwide, Landor Associates, working with lots of different Fortune 100 clients, everything from food to technology to energy to pets. And then I went and worked at PepsiCo for a while. And after PepsiCo, I just decided to take a little break and kind of nurture my entrepreneurial side and my spirit. And so I decided to start an e-commerce company, which I called Verhaal. And Verhaal, I'll tell just a little bit of story about that. Verhaal is a Dutch word. It's spelled Verhaal, and it means story in Dutch. And my family was one of the first settlers of Manhattan, one of the first 100 families there in 1627. So my entrepreneurial roots go way back in the United States, before we were even the United States. And so that name was kind of appropriate. So I started an e-commerce company called Verhaal, and that's located at verhaal.co, not com. And then just recently, in the last few months, I've started up a kind of a sister company, Verhaal Brand Design, which is a brand design consultancy, kind of leveraging my historic skill set in brand development, graphic design, and in creative work.
Mm-hmm. Do you specialize in anything in particular in your business, or what kind of clients
I do.
Do you have?
Brand identity and graphic design are definitely key competencies. I like to talk about brand ecosystems, because as you think about brand identity, it's not really just a logo. It's also color, font, photography style. And so many businesses have such a broad range of brand touch points these days. I mean, everything from retail stores to outdoor signage to online to social media, products themselves on shelves, retail displays. There's so many different brand touch points that being able to design a kind of cohesive system that's consistent across all of those is a challenge for everything from individual entrepreneurs all the way up to the largest corporations. So designing really cohesive and consistent brand ecosystems is kind of my specialty.
And your customers, are they small businesses, medium businesses, large businesses, or is there any particular ones?
I mean, my history, my career obviously has been working with very large businesses. And, one of what the kind of value add that I'm bringing to my consultancy is that, I've, learned these strategic design processes and business strategy processes that the largest corporations use to develop new brands and products and manage their own brands. And those, theories and tools and strategies that those companies use, that I, did while I was working in larger agencies, are the same, needs that smaller companies and individuals have. So I bring, the ability to bring really very thoughtful, strategic work to, everything from individual entrepreneurs and, to small to medium-sized businesses. So I'm able to give them what could be in a large agency a $250,000 branding job. I'm able to bring it to an individual or a small company for a fraction of that amount.
And what do you enjoy most about what you do, Philip?
Well, I think what I really love most is I love creating. I love helping. There's design is really about kind of I like to call it the intersection of art and science. I mean, it's really where beauty meets function. Design, there's a difference between art and design. Art is very subjective and is really all about beauty. Design is actually for something. It's supposed to, do something. So I love how you can make something. You can design something so it actually functions and does what it needs to do, but also brings a level of beauty and grace to whether it's a product or a logo or a uniform. I just love kind of that wedding of design and art. And I just love solving problems. I mean, one of the great things about working with clients is that the range of problems that they have to solve are, myriad. They just, everything from, our identity on our website doesn't look right, or, we're having trouble kind of maintaining consistency across all of our different touch points. I love learning about new industries. That's another thing that I really love about it. I've worked in everything from aerospace to, technology to pet food. And every time you work with a new client or on a new project, you have to really dive into a deep kind of competitive audit and kind of discovery process with their brand to really learn about their industry, learn about the consumers, learn about what the consumers' needs are, how they're met, what their competitive set is doing, what their competitive advantage is. And so getting in and learning about new businesses is just absolutely fascinating. It's one of the things that I just, absolutely love about what I do, this level of kind of discovery and learning.
Mm-hmm. And what is it that drives you?
I think what really drives me most is curiosity. I've always been a really curious person. And, when I hear people who are talking about, entrepreneurial development or personal development, talk about, finding your passion, I think that that's kind of a tough thing to do. Labeling something your passion is very much, it kind of puts on a tremendous amount of weight on it. And I think that's one of the things a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. They kind of they're trying to figure out, like, what is it that drives them? What is their passion? And what I like to do when I talk to people, other entrepreneurs and businesses, is that not to try and figure out or nail down exactly what your passion is, but to really follow your curiosity, because your curiosity is what's going to take you to new places, and you never know what your journey is going to be. You may explore and get in and try something, and it may actually lead you in a very different path. I mean, my career is a perfect example of that. I mean, I started off as a painter and then, fell into putting my work on T-shirts, and then fell into the fashion industry, and the fashion industry took me into packaging, and packaging took me into agency work. So it's been, a really interesting kind of journey, and it's all brought about by curiosity.
And how do you relax when you're not working in your business?
Well, I have two big 110-pound shepherds, one long-haired German shepherd and a Shiloh shepherd, and so I spend a lot of time walking them in a huge park we have near my home. I'm also a musician, and I play guitar, bass, and I sing, and I write and record music in Logic Pro X. And I participate with other musicians doing collaborative music projects, and post my work on SoundCloud and another site called Mac Jams. And then for real fun, and one of my passions really is scuba diving. I love to go scuba diving. I was fascinated with Jacques Cousteau when I was a little kid, and so I love diving. I've dove all over the Caribbean, Hawaii. One of my favorite dives is an open water shark feeding dive that takes place in Walker's Cay in the Bahamas, which is really amazing. So if there are any divers listening, they should definitely look into that dive.
Do you have any entrepreneurial role models?
I do. I have lots. Everything from, CEOs of big companies to, individuals. I'm sure a lot of listeners here are fans of, as I am, other internet marketers, Chris Ducker, Pat Flynn, Amy Porterfield. Those are some of my favorites. I've just recently started listening to a branding podcast by a guy named Aaron Pearson. His podcast is called Branding Like a Boss, which is a really great great podcast. There's a young designer guy named Roberto Blake who's got a really successful YouTube channel and puts out just an insane amount of value and content. So check him out if you're a designer or working in that space. The biggies like Gary Vaynerchuk, Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, Elon Musk, those guys I find incredibly inspiring. But it's generally the smaller people that, I think have the most translatable to what I'm, currently going for.
Yeah. Philip, can we talk about the time before you were an entrepreneur?
Sure.
Yeah. What difficulties did you have to overcome when you started your business?
Oh, boy. Well, I think, coming from my, history of working with large corporations and large agencies, the biggest thing that kind of really threw me back was being alone. I've been working from my home office for a couple of years. I started Verhal with a partner, an old business colleague of mine in San Francisco. So we have worked virtually through Skype and conference calls. But being at home alone in my studio was really isolating. I liked it for a while, but then after a while, I really felt like I was getting out of touch. And being part of a group is you take on a lot of energy, and a lot of trend and information comes your way when you're in a group, and missing that was a big shift for me. So one of the things I've done recently, just in the last 6 months, was I joined a mastermind community online, which has just been, an incredible boon for my spirit, my, feeling plugged in, learning all sorts of new things that other entrepreneurs are going through. It's really cut down my learning curve. And I think the other difficulty was, doing it all yourself. So, branding your business, doing your sourcing, business development, email marketing, financials. It's, again, coming from large companies, you have, divisional areas that handle, all sorts of different specialties. But when you're an entrepreneur, you really have to kind of bootstrap it and learn a lot of things that you may not necessarily be, may not be your absolute strong points.
I guess you probably experienced the reality of when you do that, because when you're working in a big company, you've got people that can do this, that, and the other for you. And all of a sudden, when you're working on your own, you find you've got to do everything, and you realize how time consuming all those little bits and pieces end up being.
That's absolutely true. And I think that time management just becomes one of those all important things that, finding a way to schedule your day and prioritize effectively is a challenge. It's my favorite new Chrome extension is called the 1 minute timer, the one. What was it? I think it's the 1 hour timer or something like that. But anyway, you can just set this little timer, and you can set it for an hour, you can set it for 10 minutes, and when it goes off, it sets an alarm. So you can, schedule what you're doing. I have a tendency when I'm doing something I'm interested in or passionate about, I kind of lose track of time. So having something actually beep and go off and keep me on task is really helpful.
A good tip. Did you have any doubts that delayed you starting your business?
Yeah, I think, and I've kind of got two businesses going right now. I've got Verhal, which is the e-commerce business, and Verhal Brand Design, which is the consulting business. And I've had, doubts on both of those. I mean, I think on the e-commerce on Verhal, I didn't know firsthand a lot about e-commerce. I've worked in branding and marketing for a long time, so I knew about it from working with clients. But in terms of really getting in there, getting your hands dirty, learning about different e-commerce platforms, website design, shipping, inventory management, all those sorts of things were very new. And, and not knowing about it was one of the reasons why I wanted to get in there and do it. I really wanted to kind of learn those things and get my hands dirty. And it's been just an incredible learning experience and very fun. But it definitely was, it was daunting when I started off, just because there's so much to learn. And I think, doing your research and doing, a competitive audit of the space, or, the retail kind of commerce space that you're going into is really, really important. And on the brand design side, on my overhaul brand design, the consultancy, I think finding what my real niche was. They say the riches are in the niches, so really kind of defining who my customer target was going to be and what my value add was going to be for them. Took a little thinking and time, really deciding that I wanted to take big branding solutions to smaller companies for less money. So they were affordable to them, but they were getting real value and real high level thinking. That only giant companies have historically been able to afford. That's something that I'm really passionate about. And I guess the other biggest thing that you kind of struggle with at first is this not having the security of that paycheck, right? So I mean, when you're working for a big company, you just show up and you do your job as best you can, and the paycheck gets direct deposited. It's lovely. But when you're working on your own, you're really, you're getting out there and hustling. You're doing business development as well as developing your own product, and that's a big change.
And what mistakes did you make that slowed your journey?
Oh, what mistakes didn't I make? That's the question. But I mean, really, when it comes down to it, what I think is that there are really no mistakes. I really think that, getting in there and getting your hands dirty and actually trying stuff and making mistakes is how you learn, right? No one's an expert at anything right out of the gate. I've been working on an idea of starting a podcast, and I've been really inspired by you in starting this podcast. And, right when you, out of the gate, you can't do everything perfect. You just got to start. It's like if someone made the analogy of when you play tennis, you can go and watch all the YouTube videos on tennis that you want and read all the tennis books and, sit in your backyard and swing the racket and get the feel for it. But until you get on the court and start hitting balls, you can't start learning about tennis. And so, you've got to start. And as soon as you start, then you start hitting the ball over the fence in a bad way in tennis. And then, slowly you get better and better and better. But you can't overthink it at the beginning. You just got to dive in. And I think that's a lot of what entrepreneurship is about.
What are some of the things that you did before you started your business that would be helpful tips to some of the listeners who haven't yet taken the first step on the entrepreneur way?
Sure. I think, the main one, and I think it's somewhat of an unpopular kind of opinion, but, I think that, and I've heard this from Gary Vaynerchuk as well as others, but really, and I did it myself, it's like stay in your job for as long as you can. Really milk for all the money and connections that you can. And work on your business at night and on the weekends. Start making steady income in your business before you sack your day job. I think that, really paying attention to leveraging my connections while I was, in the corporate world and in the agency world has really paid a lot of dividends as I've gone on my entrepreneurial way. The other aspect of it is you really have to think about, banking 6 to 12 months worth of living expenses, before you kind of take off on your own, because you never know how long it's going to take to really bring in income. So I'd say, number one, stay in your job as long as you can. Number two, design your brand I'm coming from a design perspective, so that's what I'm going to kind of talk to a little bit. But I would say design your brand before you go. Meaning, a lot of people just go to Fiverr or 99 Designs and they have a logo designed, or they design one of their own and they throw it up on their website, and then they start, doing social media and YouTube and all this stuff. And then before they know it, they realize that they've got to kind of design into a lot of holes that they may have in their branding. And what that can create is a lot of inconsistency, and consistency is really king when it comes to consumer recognition, right? So whenever a consumer or a customer of yours comes to your site or comes to your Facebook page or comes to your Twitter feed, you want their initial reaction, their initial view of you to be consistent. So the same picture of you, the same color scheme that you're using, the same fonts, the same logo, same photography style, same pattern or texture. All of those things are really important. And to design them kind of out of the gate and have a little palette of those things ready to go before you kind of start putting yourself out there in all these different channels is really important. And, my own little pet peeve on that is that I think that, cheaper is not better. And, a lot of entrepreneurs starting off don't have a lot of money, and I totally get that. But when it comes to brand design work, you really get for what you pay for. And so I'm not a big fan of 99 Designs or Fiverr. I think that, having worked with a lot of graphic designers and structural designers, web designers in my career, you can contact people who are still in college and school, and they can give you, much better strategically designed work for your purposes for, a very small amount of money, and they're hungry to do it. So reach out to the design schools in your neighborhood if you need some stuff like that.
Good advice. Can we talk about the entrepreneurial journey a little bit now?
Sure.
Do you think culture is important from the beginning in a business?
Yeah, I do. In my career, I've seen a lot of corporate cultures. I mean, I've worked in my agency work. I've worked with dozens and dozens of large companies and small companies, and I've seen a lot of corporate cultures from the inside. And corporate cultures and company cultures are very different from each other. I mean, the culture of Chevron is different from Safeway, is different from PetSmart, is different from General Electric, different from Pete's Coffee and Tea on the West Coast. So kind of trying to map out your culture, even when it's just you, and put it into writing, I think, is a really important step. And it's as important a step, I think, than as your business plan, and writing a mission statement for your brand. And what is your brand personality? Is it high energy? Is it innovative? Is it risk taking? Is it, in financial services? Is it conservative? Is it thoughtful? Is it rational? Kind of attributing adjectives to your company and trying to nail down what you want your company to and your business to be like, and the kind of personality you want the people who you eventually either hire on or work with to have to represent your brand, I think is really, really important. I've seen a lot of bad corporate cultures, having, siloed organizations or divisions that don't talk to each other, or, really unclear ownership of decision making. All of those things kind of lead to very, dangerous and kind of unproductive cultures. So, I think culture is really important. And I think that trying to create it and design it and define it as early as you can in your entrepreneurial journey is really, really important.
Knowing what you know now, is there anything that if you'd known it when you started out would have helped you to shortcut the learning curve?
Oh, definitely. And I mentioned this before. I think number one was joining a mastermind group. I think that the entrepreneurial journey is a very lonely journey, and the more and quicker you make it less lonely, the better off you're going to be. So I joined a mastermind online community. It's a paid community, but it has a lot of very serious, energetic and ambitious entrepreneurs on there, many of whom know a lot more than I do. I think it's really important not to be the smartest person in the room, because you want to surround yourself with people who have what you want, and you can learn by emulating them. So finding a mastermind group, I think that, is either a Facebook group or has an independent website, is really, really important. I would also suggest finding a mentor. So either somebody you've worked with a business in the past, or entrepreneur that you found in your mastermind group, or part of a chamber of commerce or something, and, make a connection. Ask them if they can mentor you and act as a sounding board for some of your decisions, and make sure that someone that has, what you want. And so I think that, that's super important. One of the things that I did just recently in the past few months was I actually joined a co-working space. So I joined a space where other entrepreneurs and individual consultants work out of, And it has meeting rooms and technology and printers and stuff that you can use. But what it does is it gets me out of my home office and gets me into an office-like space, but in physical contact with other entrepreneurs who are, doing kind of like things that I am. And I found it to be really inspiring. It's great for networking. And it just kind of, I think success doesn't happen in a vacuum. And I think co-working spaces are one of those things that really, really helps kind of energize an entrepreneur and has energized me. The other thing I would say is network, network. Join networking events, go to conferences. Conferences can be expensive, so be choiceful. But it's always money well spent. And when I decide to invest in one, it always pays dividends. Another recent thing that I've just done is joined our Chamber of Commerce. So getting involved in your local business front and making kind of connections and friends in your local business community is also really great for business development. And again, a different way to kind of where you can find mentors and influencers in your business.
And how much does gut feeling influence your decisions in your business?
Well, being a creative person, a lot of times I'm completely driven by my emotions. I've been, one of the reasons why I think I've been successful in the business world is that, as a creative designer type person, I have I have a real a mix of right and left brain, and so design can be very, very subjective, but strategic design is not. So being very choiceful and planful about what you want your design to achieve is really important. So having that level of rational thought and logical, energy around what you do is really important. And for me, as a creative person, having that balance of, from the emotional to logical is really important.
Life is made of constant change, whether we like it or not. In fact, a lot of people say that the only constant in life is change. Philip, how do you try to keep up with change?
Well, working in the fashion industry for a long time, one of the things that I really learned was how to stay on top of trend. When you're in fashion, you have to put out a collection every 3 months. And so, you're only as good as your last collection in that world. And so, I kind of cut my teeth flying around the world and shopping retail and fashion in Asia and Europe, in the United States. And so I've kind of taken that knowledge of the value of trend into my entrepreneurial business. And so I really stay on top of design and business trends in a broad range of industries. And I do that by going to conferences. I do it by reading voraciously, trends, blogs, news sites, reading about innovation, following influential people on Twitter and really kind of following what they're posting. And I also do a lot of learning on sites like Skillshare, Udemy, lynda.com, Coursera. Coursera is amazing. I mean, it offers university level education for free. And you can get certificates. I mean, it's a time commitment, but it's really serious learning possibilities online, which is amazing. It's just phenomenal that people offer this stuff for free. So I think the biggest challenge is keeping up with all of the information that's out there and, the change. One of the things that I really love that's really been helpful for me in the last year is a site called Feedly. I'm sure some of you are probably familiar with it. And it's basically you can just set up a newsfeed of topics and sources and blog feeds and magazines and online news services around a specific topic that you like. So you can basically kind of architect your own news feed. And it really saves a tremendous amount of time, and time being, one of the most valuable things of an entrepreneur. It saves a lot of time kind of searching and going on a million blogs and trying to stay up to date. It kind of brings it all together in one source. The other great thing about it, which is really incredible, is that it makes sharing with that content on on Twitter or LinkedIn, really easy. So you don't have to kind of like jump back and forth between sites. It has buttons to just very easily share that content, whatever you think is going to be of value to your customers and to your contacts.
And what is your favorite book on entrepreneurialism, business, personal development, leadership, or motivation? And can you tell us why you have chosen it?
Sure. I have a few, and I'll just talk about a couple. One, and I'm sure you've heard this a lot, is, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. It's an amazing, amazing book. If anyone has not read it, they should. That is one of my favorites in terms of really putting a spotlight on prioritizing and time management. It's been very, very important for me. There's another book that I've talked about through my creative career at design agencies and managing creative departments, a book called Orbiting the Giant Hairball. It's a funny name, by a guy named Gordon McKinsey. And he had worked at Hallmark Cards for, 15 or 20 years as a creative director. And one of the challenges of being a creative and working with corporations is that they're kind of diametrically opposed types of organisms. Corporations are meant to be logical and process-driven, and creative organizations are much more emotional and subjective and non-linear. And so he does an incredible job of describing how you can maintain your creative energy and spirit, but then still working with and needing to work with a corporation or a company. So, it's a wonderful thing for any kind of company that works for other businesses in a creative way. How do you maintain that level of creative energy and spirit and life while you may be working with a corporation or a business that doesn't have that sort of culture? And it was an incredible, influential book for me. Another one was a book called The Rules of the Red Rubber Ball by a guy named Kevin Carroll, who his title was Creative Catalyst at Nike. I had the opportunity to hear him speak early in my career, and incredibly inspiring guy. And that book, Rules of the Red Rubber Ball, is a perfect book if you are looking for that passion, or you're kind of trying to exercise your curiosity, as I spoke about earlier, and kind of trying to find what it is that lights your fire. So it's a great, really fun book to read. One other that I'll mention that's, I think, really important and has been for me is a book, and it's been around forever, but it's a book called The Power of Now. It's by an author named Eckhart Tolle, and it's been translated into about 50 languages around the world. Really influential book. And it's all about being present, so living in the present moment. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't plan for the future or that the future isn't important. But it's very easy as an entrepreneur to get overwhelmed by, all the stuff we have to do and what is in the future, and then sometimes to get burdened or brought down or dragged down by the history of what we've had in our past. And he does a really incredible job of talking about, having your mind stay present in the future, because if you're stuck in the future, the wreckage of your future, or if you're stuck in the wreckage of your past, then you can't make best use of the present moment. And being present is the best way to be as effective as possible in what you do, is to really be, kind of have your consciousness in the here and now. It's been a really influential book for me.
Everyone, when you have a busy life, listening to audiobooks is a great way to expand your knowledge in the time when you may be doing other things, such as driving or when you are at the gym. We have a special offer for you of a free audiobook of your choosing. To choose your free audiobook, go to www.freeaudiobookoffer.com. As long as you've not already signed up, then you will qualify. Philip, what I'd like to do with you now is speculate about a few things about the future.
Sure.
What one thing would you do with your business if you knew that you could not fail?
I think that I would probably publish a tremendous amount of content in terms of starting a YouTube channel, writing more ebooks. And I think that it's a challenging space. Number one, there's a lot of competition there. But really bringing value to your audience and your customers is is all about, publishing things that they can use. So I think that, in my branding work, I'm putting a tremendous amount of effort into developing content to share with my customers. And so I think that if I couldn't fail, I would do even more of that.
And what skill, if you were excellent at it, would help you the most to double your business?
I think having an MBA, really. And, in my career, I've had the luxury of being challenged with larger and larger roles and having incredible mentors in my career. Shout out to Lisa Jacoby, one of my old managers, who was able to give me assignments and responsibilities that kind of stretched my business abilities, meaning teaching me how to read a P&L statement, a profit and loss statement, teaching me how to manage a budget, learning how to manage designers and write SMART goals for people and do performance appraisals and, all of the kind of business level things that aren't a usual toolbox that are given to designers or creative people out of school or in their initial jobs. So having, I think, stronger classical business acumen when it comes to finances and business planning is one of those things that I've had to grow that muscle over my career. But if I'd had a little more formal training or had really pushed that, getting some training in that early in my career, I think it would have definitely helped because I'm still coming up to speed on that.
In 5 years from now, if a well-known business publication was publishing an article on your business after talking to your customers and suppliers, what would you like it to say?
I think what I'd love it to say is that Verhaal Brand Design and Philip VanDusen made my brand magnetic and a love mark for my customers. I think the gold standard of either bringing a product to market or helping another brand with their design and branding and their design ecosystem is creating a consistent message, both in terms of visuals, in terms of sound, in terms of photography, that creates such a beautiful, memorable, and relevant picture of their brand for their customer, that their customer remembers it, reveres it, and recommends it to others. That creating that level of magnetism and loyalty, brand loyalty, is the gold standard. And I think that if someone was writing an article about my group, that if saying that we help to do that for our customers and clients, that would be my dream.
We're now at the part of the show where you share 3 golden nuggets with us. Philip, what is your favorite quote and how have you applied it?
My favorite quote. One of my favorite quotes is by a guy named Paul Pressler, who was the CEO of Gap Inc. after Mickey Drexler left. And he actually said to me personally, he said, Philip, a great career is more like a web than a ladder. And I've really taken that to heart. And my career has really been kind of a personification of that quote, and the fact that, what I've done in my career has not been linear. The things I've done and the curiosity that I've expressed across what I've done has taken me in a very non-linear kind of way through my career. And it's been amazingly enjoyable and profitable and exciting. And I think that you can have only so much planning in where you want to go, because the forces of nature in the world and karma are going to throw things in your way, challenges and opportunities that you're not expecting. And so having a level of openness and willingness to kind of take those jogs in the road where they present themselves and making the most of them is really what I've tried to live my life by. And, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are constantly being thrown, roadblocks and opportunities in their their businesses in there as they, develop and work through what they want to do. And I think being open to that, not being linear, is really helpful.
It's a great quote. Do you have any favorite online resources that you can share with us?
Oh, tons, yeah. Well, just recently I started to use HubSpot, which is kind of a CRM tool, online CRM tool, which is, at a certain level free. And I've struggled to maintain my contacts. I have, over 1,000 contacts on LinkedIn. I've got a ton in my address book. I've got them in spreadsheets all over the place. And so having a way to kind of centralize those contacts and really organize them has been really helpful to me. And it's also helpful in terms of building your email list, and it interfaces with MailChimp really well. So you can start to set up email funnels to make your workflow in communicating with your prospective customers and clients and current customers much less labor intensive. So that's definitely, I'd say, whoever's not using HubSpot should check that out. MailChimp, of course, Feedly, I mentioned. Again, I also started using SumoMe, which is a suite of tools that are plugins for websites. So everything from pop-up email list builders to all sorts of different kind of plugins that work with Squarespace or Weebly or Wix or whatever platform your website or WordPress that your website happens to be on. So check out SumoMe. And one last one I'll mention is a lot of people, this is one of the things I've come across in doing branding, is there's a lot of crappy photography out there. And a lot of people are using, stock photography that they find online, and it has no personality, no energy, no differentiation between you and your competitors. So one of the things I recommend is Flickr, the website, has a Creative Commons area where there are millions and millions of photographs on just about every conceivable subject that photographers around the world have uploaded and allowed other people to use. And you can choose the license that you want available, whether it's completely free for commercial use, whether it just needs attribution in terms of just writing down the photographer's name. So it's a way to get really interesting, unique photography that can tell your brand's message and story in a way that's more unique and doesn't feel cheesy.
And what is your best advice to other entrepreneurs?
I think my best advice is really to, one of the things I used to kind of say is like, dare to be stupid. I think that not trying to being open to learning and being open to not being the smartest guy in the room, and to, finding people that you can learn things from. And for me, that's been joining a mastermind community that's full of a lot of people who are entrepreneurs who are a lot more advanced in working for themselves than I am. I've worked for other people for most of my career. I think that, being open to learning and, just getting started is the best advice. It's really about jumping in, like my tennis analogy. It's like you really can't make progress and learn until you start doing something. It's like if you're going to, my wife is studying viola, and she's older like I am. And she just decided that one day she wanted to learn viola. And when it comes down to it, one day you have to pick up a viola and put a bow across the strings and make a horrendous noise, and you can't learn viola unless you start working through the horrendous squeaks and squalls, right? I mean, that's just what happens. But, she's only been doing it for a little over a year, and she's making music now, and that's really what it's about. You can make music, but you got to get in there and kind of make some squeaks and squalls first.
Everyone, if you didn't manage to get a note of Philip's favourite resource or his favourite books, you can find the links on Philip's show notes page. Just go to theentrepreneurway.com and search for Philip or Philip VanDusen in the search box. Philip, is there anything else that you'd like to add about your business?
I think I'm good, Neil. You've done a great job, and I'm really enjoying your podcast.
Thank you.
And your guests are fantastic, and I learn a lot from them. So everyone keep coming back and listening, because Neil's got it going on.
Thank you. It's been an honor having you on the show, Philip. You really have given us some great quotes and some great ideas of how to brand your products and your business and things like that, which is great to hear.